Hola amigos, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a un nuevo video. Yo soy Mariana Botello y estamos aquí con Elise Kova.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be talking with you, Mariana.
I'm excited too, thank you so much. And you may know her because she is the writer of the Married to Magic, Air Witness, and A Trial of Sorceress series. You all know her, I know her, and I'm so excited to have her here. So enjoy this interview and learn a lot. Where do the ideas for your series come from?
So every series came from different places. One of the things that I'm very inspired by is music. I wrote a lot of A Deal with the Elf King to the song Her Sweet Kiss from the Witcher Netflix show soundtrack.
Oh wow.
My Air Awakened series, I was really inspired by a song called Clarity by Zed. That's definitely a huge part of my inspiration. I'm also inspired by the people I meet, the places I go, like fabulous Mexico City. Yeah, just a lot of things that all come together.
Are you gonna write a fantasy novel in Mexico now?
I don't really do one for one, oh, this place in my fantasy book is inspired by this real life place, because I don't know if I succeed or not, but I like the idea that I write books that everyone can maybe see themselves and their own experience and what they live in them. So it's all a little bit of a mashup, but I definitely think there will be elements of Mexico City that will make it into future books.
I'm thrilled to read that. What drew you to writing fantasy? Was there a specific book that inspired you, an event in your life? I don't know.
Honestly, it's always been a part of my life. The very first Wi-Fi password at my house was Gandalf. I grew up reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Harry Potter, of course. I read fantasy for as long as I can remember. So I definitely think that it was never a question for me. I was always going to write fantasy because it's what I love and what I know.
Wow, and is there a story that touched your heart the most? Or
the first one that comes to mind with this question is I was in high school and I was going through a really tough time, as a lot of people do in high school, and I had a teacher that recommended a book called Magic Casement by Dave Duncan to me. I haven't read it in a long time, so I don't know how it holds up as an adult or anything, but it just sort of reignited my passion for books and reading, and it was what I needed at that moment.
That's awesome. I love teachers that inspire people.
Absolutely.
I had a Spanish teacher who inspired me to read too. She showed me the magic of books. Yeah, because before her, I only read Harry Potter 100 times because I thought that was everything there was, the fun part of reading. And then I read Ensayo sobre la ceguera of José Saramago. He's a Latino American author, and that's where my journey in reading started. It's interesting that it's from a teacher because I don't know your friends or the people around you, but I feel that my friends are more against reading because teachers that made them read horrible books.
Well, I think it's very different because I got burnt out when I was in college on reading, and I couldn't read for fun because I had to read so much for school. But I think that you find that one book that reignites that passion.
What is your biggest challenge when creating fictional and fantastical worlds?
I think one of the biggest challenges for me is that I'm constantly trying to think of and trying to balance realism, and what I mean by realism, because these are fantastical worlds, but they feel real. They feel oh, that could happen in this world. That's not ridiculous, or this town being here by a river makes sense, and this other town being in the mountains makes sense. And I worry that sometimes things don't make sense, and so I want to spend a lot of time making sure that they do. But at the same time, one of the things that I love about fantasy is things that don't make sense. Castles that we couldn't build in our world, but can be built because of magic. I think that's just really special.
Yeah, and that in fantastic books, everything can be real.
Yes.
There are no rules.
Exactly. So trying to balance that where it's real enough that a reader can be immersed in a world, but also still fantastical.
That's great. And how does that work in your inside your brain? Do you keep a map, like these are the rules of my world, or it just exists in your brain and you know what can and can't be done?
A little bit of both. I do try and update, I call it, and a lot of other authors call it, a book Bible. So it's just all of the information about the world, but sometimes I forget to update it as I'm writing. So there will be things where I'll be like, I know I made this rule, and I'll go back and I'll check the book Bible and I'll be like, of course I didn't write it down.
Do you go back to that book after you finish the series? Is that a book that you console, that you keep, or you finish the series and that Bible goes away?
It goes away. I am already, as soon as I finish one series, I'm on to the next one, to the point that people will mention characters from my past series and I have to really think about it because I'm just in the next world completely.
Okay, that's fun. That's funny. Like, did I write this?
Yeah, who was that character again? You probably know more than I do right now.
Is there a book that was especially difficult to write because, I don't know, a special character, a situation, the world itself?
The first one that comes to mind is a duet with the Siren Duke. I don't think it's out yet in Spanish, but I think it will be very soon if it's not actually out yet. And that character, the main character of that story, is very different from a lot of the other characters I've written. She's one of the oldest characters I've written. She's in her 20s, and she was in a bad marriage and she escaped and got out, and the book is sort of about healing and a second chance at love and all of that. And those are topics that are important to me. And so it was very difficult because constantly when writing, I wanted to do them justice and I wanted to do her story justice.
And did you feel more pressure because of how people needed to take that story, or because you wanted, you had really high expectations about that story?
I think probably I had high expectations about that story, and I also knew it was a story that was a little bit of a risk because it wasn't my normal sort of character and mold and story, and whenever you take a risk, it's scary.
How do you overcome challenges that you face writing? For example, this time that you had this character, or maybe, I don't know if you had writer's block. What inspires you when you don't know what to write, what goes next?
So I think writer's block, whenever I encounter it, I think it is a problem with the book. And what I mean by that is when you're writing, you've made choices that either don't make sense, or you've written yourself into a corner where there's no way for the characters to reasonably or realistically get out of a situation, and you don't know what to do next. So I think when I have writer's block, I go back to the last time that the book felt good to me, and I look at all the choices that were made between that point and where I am now and say, okay, what in here was maybe not the best choice to make, or if I make a different choice, do I feel differently?
Oh wow, so you may erase 100 pages if necessary?
Oh, very much so. I was actually saying and mentioning in another interview, probably about this much or so of Elf King is completely rewritten from the first draft.
Oh wow, I don't know if they see there. Oh yeah,
oh,
they
okay.
See.
About the first 100 pages maybe were probably, I threw out the first 100 pages and completely rewrote it from my first draft.
Wow, so you're not afraid of erasing?
No, not at all. I think that I find a lot of my story as I'm writing the first draft, but that means I throw a lot into the story that doesn't make sense at the end, and so I have to pull it out, or I go, oh, this is a cool idea and this is a cool idea, but they need to be one idea. So there's a lot of changes that happens for me in editorial.
That's amazing. I don't see myself erasing 100 pages or more than half of the book. I would be like, no, this is going to fit somehow. I'm gonna make this fit there.
And it's just a point that you reach where you're like, the story's better without it, as hard as it is.
Has there been a specific event that has significantly shaped your career as a writer?
Probably this book, because this book really, not only did it do well in the USA, but it did well in other countries, and I've had such a privilege to meet people like you and go places and experience new and different cultures and locations, and that means a lot to me. So that was very special.
Is there any writing advice you would have like to have when you were younger? Like that would have helped you when you were younger?
I think the biggest writing advice that I couldn't have understood early on in my career or before I was an author, and that I like to give to people as well is, and it goes back to what I was saying about Elf King, your book can change so much in editing. And I think that it's easy to be afraid of your book not being good enough, or your idea not being good enough, or your prose doesn't sound the way you want it to. And I think that so many people have that fear and they just need to let go of it. I think that would be my biggest advice, would be if you're afraid, just let go of the fear and write the book, because it can change so much in editing.
And you didn't struggle while the people from the publishing house edited your... Did they ask you to change something that you didn't want to change, or you just take everything?
That has absolutely happened, where I've been told, oh, you should change this, and my initial reaction is, I don't want to. My first thought is, okay, I don't want to, but then I stop and I think and I go, do I have that feeling because I don't want to do the work, because I'm attached to it, because I'm afraid, or do I have that feeling because it's actually good? And more often than not, when the editor suggests something, it comes from a place of making the book stronger, and the change is important.
Well, I think that distinction is really important and difficult, I guess, to question yourself and do this work of why I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And have there been any changes that it's no, this is what I want, and this is non-negotiable to change?
I'm trying to think. I can't think of any, because I think most things, the closest I think that I've come is people have asked for a change and I've said, okay, I don't want to change it in this way for these reasons, but how can we change it to make it stronger, to fix the problems that have been seen, but without taking this thing that I really want?
Okay, so you find a way.
Yeah, and it's important to be collaborative, I think, in your editing.
And I think that speaks a lot about you in a good way, about you being an author. Yeah, I think that's a really good characteristic that for an author to have.
Thank you.
And last, which book from another author would you like to recommend to us?
If you want a standalone fantasy with romance, I recommend Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I'm pretty sure it's in Spanish. I love that one. And if you want a more serious fantasy romance, I would recommend The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen.
Okay, I have also interviewed Naomi Novik.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but I haven't read Uprooted. I've read the Scholomance,
yes.
Scholomance novels, and I want to read the ones of the dragons.
Yes, I haven't read those, and I really want to as well.
Thank you so much for this interview. It was really enriching.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias a ustedes por ver este video hasta acá. Espero que les haya gustado mucho este video. Espero que hayan aprendido muchísimo de ella. Es una increíble autora. Esperamos que la lean pronto, y si aún no lo han hecho, y si ya lo hicieron, dejen sus preguntas acá abajo de qué otras preguntas ustedes le quieren hacer, y a lo mejor hay parte 2.
Thank you to everyone who reads. It means the world to me. I couldn't do what I do without you. So thank you.
Bye.
Bye.